She thought she married the man of her dreams. But his mother became her worst nightmare. If you have not already, please hit the subscribe button and click the notifications bell. This way, you will be the first to know when new stories are posted from Sonia Welch. Now enjoy the story. Stephanie White was born into hardship. Her earliest memories were of a cramped apartment inside a rundown housing project on Atlanta's West End, where the hallways smelled of bleach and broken dreams. Her mother, Kim, worked herself to exhaustion just to keep food on the table for Stephanie and her younger sister, Taylor. Their father had walked out when Stephanie was only 7, leaving one morning under the guise of finding work. He never came back. Months later, whispers spread through their community, and soon Kim discovered the bitter truth. He had built a new life across town with another woman and 2 small children that were his. The betrayal nearly crushed her, but she hardened, swallowing her tears and working double shifts to raise her daughters alone. Life in the projects was cruel. Stephanie and Taylor were teased mercilessly at school for their hand-me-down clothes and worn-out shoes. Stephanie learned to hold her head high, but deep inside she carried an iron vow: she would escape this life. She would build something better, not just for herself, but for her mother and sister. Her grades were her ticket out. Smart, determined, Stephanie graduated near the top of her class. Her dream was to attend college, major in computer engineering, and design the kind of technology she read about in magazines. But when she nervously presented the idea to her mother, Kim shook her head. "Child, I can barely keep the lights on." "College?" Kim's voice was weary but practical. "That's not for us. You need a job." Stephanie cried herself to sleep that night. She felt the future slipping from her grasp. But life, with all its sharp turns, had other plans. Stephanie found work as a data entry clerk at Sullivan & Sons, a powerful company founded by Thornton. Sullivan, a man whose invention of a world-renowned auto part had made him a multi-millionaire. At first, the job was tedious. Endless spreadsheets, endless hours. But it paid steady money and kept her family afloat. Then came the night fate intervened. It was nearly 6:30 p.m. when the office phone rang. Stephanie answered, expecting another routine call. Instead, a frantic male voice barked, "I need help. This damn program won't work." Stephanie frowned at the caller ID. It was coming from the executive floor, the Sullivan's domain. She realized he thought he'd reached the IT department, but they had gone home an hour earlier. She could have told him he dialed the wrong place. Instead, her curiosity and quiet confidence in her computer skills pushed her forward. "I'll be right there, Mr. Sullivan," she replied calmly, hanging up before doubt could stop her. Upstairs, the 3rd floor gleamed like another world. Mahogany walls, gold fixtures, marble floors, luxury Stephanie had only ever seen in magazines. She barely had time to take it in before a tall, dark, broad-shouldered man appeared. Raymond Sullivan. His handsome face was clouded with frustration, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up. "You must be IT," he said with relief. Stephanie didn't correct him. She slipped into his chair, fingers flying across the keyboard. Within minutes, she diagnosed the problem and fixed the bug. When she rose, she said simply, "It's good now." Raymond checked his screen, astonished. "That's awesome. You must be new. I've never seen you in the IT department." Stephanie smiled. "I'm Stephanie White, data entry. Phones roll to me after 5. Raymond looked at her then, really looked at her. Her warm brown eyes, her radiant smile. Something stirred. "You should be in the IT department," he said softly. She laughed. "If an opening comes up, I'll be counting on you for a reference." From that night, neither of them forgot the spark. Their paths crossed again a week later in the lobby. "We meet again," Raymond teased, stepping into the elevator with her. Before she reached her floor, he blurted, "Can I take you to dinner?" "Just to thank you." Stephanie hesitated, then smiled. "I'd love that." Dinner turned into late-night conversations, weekend getaways, and eventually love. Raymond used his influence to help Stephanie transition into the IT department, where she thrived. She began paying down her mother's bills and even saved for Taylor's future tuition. When Raymond introduced Stephanie to his parents, Thornton welcomed her warmly. He admired her intelligence, her resilience, the way she carried herself with dignity despite her modest background. Juanita, his wife, was the opposite. Elegant, sharp-tongued, with an air of superiority, Juanita dismissed Stephanie immediately. "She's not our kind," Juanita hissed later to Raymond. "She didn't go to college. She doesn't come from money. You could do much better." But Raymond's heart was set. Defying his mother's wishes, he proposed to Stephanie during a trip to Paris. Thornton celebrated them. Juanita seethed. The wedding was the talk of Atlanta. Stephanie's family wept tears of pride as she walked down the aisle in lace and diamonds. Even Juanita's pointed avoidance couldn't dim Stephanie's glow. Marriage, however, brought new battles. Stephanie moved into Raymond's mansion, redecorating to make it feel like a home. Juanita saw this as trespassing. Her disapproval turned into sabotage. She invited Raymond's glamorous ex, Mia, into their home, pointing out all the changes Stephanie made and laughing at her choices. When Stephanie caught them, Juanita made an excuse that Mia was there to pick up something she had left a long time ago. It was a lie. And when Stephanie confronted Raymond about it, he just shook his head and said, "Don't let it bother you. You know how Mom is." But things got worse. One evening, Stephanie had spent the entire afternoon in the kitchen, carefully preparing Raymond's favorites. The rich smell of fried chicken filled the air, mingling with the buttery aroma of macaroni and cheese baking in the oven. Collard greens simmered slowly on the stove beside candied yams, while a bowl of potato salad chilled in the refrigerator. A golden pan of cornbread rested on the counter, its crust crisp and inviting. Raymond hadn't grown up eating soul food, but ever since Stephanie introduced him to it, he couldn't get enough. It reminded him of love, her love. But to Juanita, it was nothing more than grease and starch, as she called it. Standing stiffly in the doorway, she watched Stephanie cook with thinly veiled disgust, lips pursed as if the very sight of collard greens offended her. "You know, Stephanie," Juanita said coolly, "all this heavy food isn't good for Raymond. Salmon and asparagus, that's the kind of meal he should be eating, not this." Stephanie ignored her, focusing on seasoning the chicken, refusing to let Juanita sour her mood. When she finally excused herself to freshen up before dinner, Juanita's eyes darted around the kitchen. The moment the coast was clear, her face twisted into a sly grin. Moving quickly, she grabbed the salt shaker and poured nearly half a cup into the pot of collard greens, stirring until the liquid grew cloudy. Then, as if that weren't enough, she walked to the oven, turned the dial from warm to a blazing 450 degrees, and quietly slipped out of the house. By the time she reached her car, she was smiling triumphantly. Minutes later, Stephanie and Raymond came downstairs, hand in hand, ready to eat. But as soon as they reached the bottom step, an acrid smell hit them. Burnt food. "Something's wrong," Stephanie gasped, rushing into the kitchen. She yanked open the oven door, only to find the chicken, macaroni and cheese, and yams shriveled and charred. Smoke curled upward as her heart sank. "Stephanie," Raymond said sharply, "why would you put the oven that high?" "I didn't," she insisted, eyes wide. "I set it to warm. I know I did." "Maybe you thought you did," he muttered, his tone skeptical. Stephanie's chest tightened as she second-guessed herself, wondering if the stress of cooking had made her careless. Trying to salvage dinner, she plated the collard greens and cornbread instead. "At least these are fine," she said softly. But the moment Raymond took a bite, he spat it out violently. "Whoa, what in the world? Did you empty the whole salt container in here?" He pushed his chair back, gagging as he ran for water. Stephanie frowned, panic flashing across her face. She had been making collard greens since she was a teenager. Her recipes were never wrong. Something wasn't right. Tentatively, she tasted a forkful, and her suspicions hardened into certainty. Someone had ruined her food. Just then, Raymond's voice carried from the kitchen. "Don't worry, babe. Mom saved the day." He returned holding a plate covered neatly with foil. She left this before she left, a note too. Said she had to run. "But Rosa made this for me." He pulled back the foil to reveal grilled salmon, potatoes, and asparagus. One portion. One plate. Nothing for Stephanie. Without hesitation, Raymond dug in, eating happily as if the disaster on the table didn't matter. Stephanie sat frozen, her appetite gone, her pride crushed. Her hands trembled in her lap as she whispered, almost to herself, "She did this. Juanita sabotaged me." When she told Raymond, her voice edged with fury. His response was the same as always. A sigh, a shake of his head, and the words that cut her deeper than any insult. "Stephanie, come on. That's just Mom. You know how she is." And just like that, he excused the betrayal. Again. Each time, Raymond dismissed it. "You know how Mom is," he'd say, leaving Stephanie to swallow her fury. When Thornton died suddenly of a heart attack, Juanita tightened her grip on Raymond, inserting herself into their lives daily. Stephanie's protector was gone, and her marriage began to crumble under Juanita's constant meddling and Raymond's blind loyalty. The breaking point came with the closet incident. Stephanie and Raymond had just returned from a brief getaway in the Bahamas, the salty breeze of the island still clinging to their skin. Laughing softly, she carried her suitcase upstairs, ready to unpack. But the moment she stepped into their bedroom, a chill swept over her. Something felt off. She glanced around. The sheets were perfectly tucked, the curtains drawn just as she had left them. Still, the air carried a sense of disturbance, as though someone had been there. Stephanie pushed the thought aside and walked to her closet. Before their trip, Juanita had mentioned her charity drive for the homeless. Stephanie had kindly told her she'd left a small bag of gently worn clothing tucked away in her closet for pickup. Surely Juanita had collected it. But when Stephanie opened the closet door, her breath caught in her throat. Her entire side of the closet was empty. Not a dress, not a pair of heels, not a scarf remained. Her heart dropped. For a wild second, she thought they'd been robbed. But Raymond's side was untouched, suits hanging neatly, shoes polished and lined in perfect rows. Confusion turned to panic. Why only my things? Then her eyes landed on a folded note resting on the dresser. Hands trembling, she unfolded it. Thank you for the donation, Stephanie. I saw some other items in your closet that looked outdated and out of style, so I had my assistant pack those as well. Juanita. Stephanie's vision blurred red. Everything? She thought. Dresses with memories stitched into them, the handbag she bought with. Her first paycheck, the shoes she saved for months to afford, gone. Her hands shook as anger surged through her body like fire. Raymond. She screamed, her voice raw with rage. He came running, startled. What's wrong? My entire side of the closet. She spat out, pointing. Your mother cleaned out all of my clothes and donated them, every last piece. Raymond's eyes widened as he looked inside, then softened with his usual calm. This has to be a misunderstanding. Grabbing his phone, he dialed Juanita. Mother, where are all of Stephanie's clothes? On the other end, Juanita's voice was cool, unbothered. Those rags? I did her a favor. Mother. Raymond's tone sharpened, but Juanita only dismissed him before hanging up. Raymond turned back to Stephanie, struggling for words. Finally, he sighed. I'm sorry, Stephanie. You know how Mother can be. I'll replace everything. Stephanie stared at him in disbelief. Do you really think it's that easy? This isn't just about clothes, Raymond. I can't take this anymore. If you won't put your mother in her place, then this marriage cannot work. His jaw tightened. If you're asking me to choose between you and my mother, Stephanie, I won't do that. Yes, she's out of line sometimes, but at the end of the day, she's still my mother. I'm all she has. Stephanie's chest ached, her voice trembling with fury and heartbreak. Then you've left me no choice. I want a divorce. He stared at her, stunned. You can't be serious. This is trivial. Trivial? Stephanie's laugh was bitter. Maybe to you. But this is my life, Raymond. From the very beginning, you've allowed your mother to wedge herself between us. His face darkened, his words turning sharp as knives. Let's be honest, Stephanie. You work for me. You live in my house. You drive the car I bought you. Without me, you have nothing. If I were you, I'd reconsider leaving. I love you, and like I said, I'll replace everything. The words struck her harder than any slap. Stephanie's throat tightened, tears burning her eyes. And though she said nothing more, deep inside, she knew he was right about one thing. She was stuck. At least for now. Stephanie stood frozen in the middle of the bedroom, her chest rising and falling with sharp, shallow breaths. Raymond's words, without me you have nothing, echoed in her ears like a cruel refrain. For years she had brushed aside Juanita's sabotage, swallowed her pride, and clung to hope that Raymond would one day choose her. But now, staring at the empty closet that once held pieces of her life, she knew the truth. He never would. That night, she lay awake beside him in silence. Raymond slept soundly, his arm thrown casually across her waist as if nothing had happened, while she stared at the ceiling, her body stiff under his touch. For the first time, she didn't feel his presence as comfort. It felt like a weight pressing her down. By dawn, her mind was made up. She slipped out of bed, padded quietly to the kitchen, and pulled open a drawer where she had stashed a business card months ago. She had met Samantha Charles, a sharp and confident attorney, at a women's networking brunch. They'd exchanged pleasantries, and Samantha had slipped her the card saying, "If you ever need legal advice, call me." Stephanie had tucked it away, unsure if she would ever use it. The next day while Raymond was at the office, her fingers shook as she dialed the number. Law Office of Samantha Charles. A warm voice answered. Stephanie swallowed hard. Hi, this is Stephanie White. I think I need your help. Samantha met her later that afternoon at a quiet cafe downtown. She was polished yet approachable, with a confidence that instantly put Stephanie at ease. Tell me everything, Samantha urged, leaning forward. Stephanie poured out years of humiliation, the sabotaged meals the ex-girlfriend paraded through, her home, the closet stripped bare, and most of all, Raymond's refusal to defend her. By the time she finished, tears streaked down her cheeks. Samantha slid a napkin across the table. Stephanie, I need you to hear me clearly. You are not powerless. You are not stuck. And you don't have to endure this another day. For the first time in months, hope flickered in Stephanie's chest. What if he fights me? Stephanie whispered. He will, Samantha said bluntly. Men like Raymond always do. But I promise you this, you will not walk away empty-handed. Not after the years you've invested. Not after the sacrifices you've made. Stephanie exhaled slowly, nodding. Her hands stopped trembling. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of secrecy and strategy. Stephanie smiled through dinners, pretended at social events, and played the dutiful wife, all while quietly gathering documents, emails, and financial records under Samantha's guidance. She no longer argued with Raymond about Juanita. Instead, she let him believe she had grown numb. That false sense of calm allowed her to plan without suspicion. Inside, however, Stephanie was transforming. Every time she met with Samantha, every time she signed another paper, she felt the chains loosen. And the night she slipped her wedding ring off her finger, placing it silently into a velvet box. She realized she was no longer the woman who had walked down the aisle 3 years earlier. She was stronger now. Ready. The divorce battle was coming. But this time, Stephanie would not fight alone. The courtroom was cold, lined with wood-paneled walls that seemed to swallow sound. Stephanie sat at the plaintiff's table in a cream-colored suit, her hair pulled back, her posture calm but resolute. Beside her sat Samantha Charles, cool and razor-sharp, flipping through a binder of evidence. Across the aisle, Raymond entered in a tailored navy suit, his jaw set in arrogance. Juanita trailed beside him, draped in pearls, her lips curled into a smug little smile as if the outcome was already written in her favor. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The gavel struck. The battle began. The defense opened with confidence. Raymond's lawyer painted Stephanie as an ungrateful woman who had been lifted out of poverty by Raymond's generosity. He emphasized that she had no degree when Raymond met her, no real assets, and that everything she now enjoyed came from him. Juanita nodded vigorously at every word, her eyes darting toward Stephanie with a look of condescension that said, "See? You were nothing without us." Stephanie sat still, her face serene. She refused to give Juanita the satisfaction of her reaction. When it was Samantha's turn, her voice was steady, deliberate. "Your Honor, we are not here to deny Mr. Sullivan's wealth. We are here to highlight Mrs. White's contributions, sacrifices, and the very real damages she suffered in this marriage. She worked faithfully in his company before ever meeting him, supported him privately, and endured. Repeated emotional sabotage from his mother, sabotage Mr. Sullivan allowed and excused. Then she began unveiling the evidence. Emails between Stephanie and Raymond about Juanita's intrusions, receipts showing her contributions to household expenses before marriage, and even testimony from coworkers who had witnessed Raymond introduce her to the IT department. Each piece chipped away at the image of Raymond as savior and Stephanie as dependent. The most damning moment came when Samantha read Juanita's handwritten note. Aloud, the one thanking Stephanie for donating her entire wardrobe. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The judge raised an eyebrow. Juanita stiffened in her seat. Raymond shifted uncomfortably. Stephanie kept her gaze steady on the judge. But inside, her heart thundered. That note, Juanita's arrogance on paper, was the smoking gun. When Raymond took the stand, his voice softened as he looked at Stephanie. "I love my wife. I made mistakes, yes, but she knows me. She knows I would replace anything. She has everything she could ever want. Why throw it away over small misunderstandings?" Stephanie's stomach clenched. The same words he had always used, "I'll replace everything." When it was Samantha's turn to cross-examine, she stepped closer. "Mr. Sullivan, are you saying Mrs. White should be grateful to tolerate humiliation because you could buy her things?" Raymond faltered. I'm saying she never went without, accept respect, accept support, accept partnership," Samantha pressed. His silence was answer enough. When the gavel finally struck, the judge's words were clear. Stephanie would walk away not only with a substantial, Financial settlement, but also with full ownership of assets Raymond had once claimed were his. The house, the car, and a portion of Sullivan & Sons stock holdings were awarded to her. Juanita gasped audibly. Raymond's face drained of color. Stephanie simply closed her eyes and exhaled. Not in triumph, but in release. As she stood to leave, she glanced at Juanita one last time. The older woman's face was tight with fury, her pearl-covered fingers trembling. Stephanie didn't smirk, didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her freedom was victory enough. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. Stephanie paused just long enough to say one thing. Marriage should never mean losing yourself. Today, I found me again. With that, she walked forward into the flashing cameras, the noise, and the unknown future. No longer a woman trapped in someone else's shadow, but her own woman, her own force, ready to begin again. For the first time in her life, Stephanie woke up without fear of eviction notices, without the weight of someone else's control. Her mother, Kim, moved in with her soon after. For years, Kim had carried the guilt of not being able to give her daughters more. But now, watching Stephanie thrive, she felt something she hadn't in decades: relief. Taylor, meanwhile, had started college, tuition fully paid by Stephanie. She would send pictures of herself in her lab coat, smiling with pride, reminding Stephanie that her sacrifices had finally come full circle. Every time Stephanie walked past her own framed degree in computer engineering from Georgia Tech, she smiled. It had taken years, tears, and countless nights of doubt, but she had done it. Stephanie didn't just settle into her new life. She flourished. With the help of her financial advisor, she invested wisely. Tech startups, real estate, even opening her own IT consulting firm, White Innovations, specializing in cybersecurity and software solutions. Within 2 years, she was making headlines in Atlanta's business circles as one of the youngest Black female entrepreneurs to secure multi-million-dollar contracts. At gala events, the same high society women who once turned up their noses at her now leaned in, eager to network. Stephanie never forgot the sting of Juanita's disapproval, but she also never let it define her. Instead, she let her success speak for itself. One magazine cover even dubbed her from projects to powerhouse, the Stephanie White story. Meanwhile, the Sullivans' world began to crack. Raymond struggled under the weight of running Sullivan & Son alone. Without his father's steady hand, poor decisions and risky investments chipped away at the company's dominance. Juanita was no longer the queen of Atlanta's social circles. Whispers spread about the company's struggles, and invitations to her luncheons dwindled. She grew bitter, her face tight with scorn, though she would never admit publicly that she missed the days when people envied her life. One evening, at a charity event, Stephanie crossed paths with them both. She arrived in an emerald gown, confidence radiating from her like light. Raymond froze when he saw her. He barely recognized the woman she had become. Juanita, on the other hand, sneered. "Money can dress you up, Stephanie," she said sharply, "but it can't give you class." Stephanie smiled, unbothered. "You're right," she replied smoothly. "Class can't be bought. It has to be taught. Thankfully, life taught me well." Her calm grace was louder than any insult. People nearby whispered, impressed by Stephanie's poise, while Juanita fumed silently. For a while, Stephanie poured her energy into her business and family, not love. But life had a way of surprising her. At a tech summit in San Francisco, she met Dr. Adrian Knight, a software engineer turned venture capitalist. He was tall, charming, and carried a quiet strength that put her at ease. Unlike Raymond, Adrian wasn't threatened by her ambition. He admired it. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, spanning from technology to childhood dreams to the weight of expectations. On their third date, Adrian told her, "I don't want to rescue you, Stephanie. I want to run beside you." That was all she had ever wanted. Partnership. Years later, Stephanie returned to the housing project where she grew up. The building was older now, more weathered, but familiar. She stood in front of the worn brick, remembering the night she and Taylor whispered about escaping. Now she had returned not as the girl who once cried herself to sleep, but as a woman who had created her own empire. Stephanie launched a foundation there, offering scholarships and STEM programs for underprivileged youth, especially girls of color who dreamed of technology but didn't know where to begin. On opening day, as she cut the ribbon, she whispered to herself, "This is the legacy. This is the real victory." Raymond never remarried. His mother's constant presence suffocated any chance of real happiness. Sullivan & Son eventually sold to a larger corporation, ending the family dynasty. Juanita, once the proud matriarch, spent spent her final years surrounded not by admirers, but by silence. Stephanie, on the other hand, stood at the helm of her company, her foundation, and her family. She had built everything she once thought impossible. When asked in an interview what motivated her most, Stephanie smiled. Survival lit the fire. But freedom taught me how to shine. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notifications bell. This way, you will be the first to know when new stories are posted from Sonia Welch. And don't forget to hit the like button and share.